When we started our church in Austin, the only way we could start was with Sunday afternoon service. We grew for 4 years, 125 people in that setting. Then we switched over to Sunday morning, Sunday night. But we had to change traditional way of Pentecostal doing things in order to start a church. There are many things. Growth requires change. We have increasing diversity, which we celebrate. But that means in the congregation and in the fellowship worldwide, people have different views. The racial tensions and ethnic tensions of society press against the church. Now, the church should not succumb to that, but we have to become more aware, more sensitive, more knowledgeable, and more careful in how we frame issues. Because it's not just about us and our group of people and how we think and how we were raised and how we define terms. It's about people from other countries, other languages, other cultures, other races that come from a very different perspective. We unite around our apostolic identity, but we've got to make room in our conversation for increasing diversity. A great part of the revival that God is giving us is diversity. We can't make a political litmus test to be a member in good standing of our church. And as we get increasing recognition, which I believe we will, that puts the spotlight on us. And that's why I've tried, even in our social media, to try to take careful positions. We have a communications council and a committee and a director that tries to help us keep abreast of changes and comment and say how the UPCI is positioning itself. Why do you think that's needed? Because now any individual can say, I'm UPC or I'm apostolic, and here's what we believe. In fact, somebody said there was some chalk out there, some website that was promoting what supposedly apostolic should believe. If we don't speak to certain things, one self-identified person becomes the spokesman to the whole world. And I love each individual minister, but I'm not so eager to have any one of 10,200 ministers say, I'm UPC, and here's what UPCI believes on such and such controversial hot-button social issue. Are you following me? As we grow, a lot of things are in the corner we can overlook. And I'm not talking about discipline. I'm just talking about finding a way to present ourselves to the world. As we grow, we're going to have to be more intentional about how we present ourselves to the world. I'm just talking about challenges. Now, facing the challenges, there are two approaches. One approach is survival mode. And Brother Soto, I believe, preached that message. It's necessary to think of survival, but it's not sufficient. We have to overcome our insecurities. We have to overcome our small mentality. We have to overcome our fortress mentality. We have to overcome being so suspicious of every new person, every new thing. And I realize whenever there's change, there is a danger. And when you have 10,000 ministers doing different things and somebody does something that's never been done before, one of those persons could have a wrong motive or could go too far. But are we going to hold back 10,000 ministers because we're afraid of change? We're afraid of what might happen? That is an insecurity mode. That is a fortress mode. That is a survival mode. What we need instead of survival mode is a revival mode. Now, if you think I'm out of the book, Jesus prayed, and I'll put this on the screen, John 14. They are not of the world, just as I am not of the world. Sanctify them by your truth. Your word is truth. I started too late. I do not pray that you should take them out of the world, but that you should keep them from the evil one. I do not pray for these alone, but for those who will believe in me through their word, that they may all be one. Here's the model of Jesus. In the world, but not of it. Some people are of the church, but not in it. Think about that. We're supposed to be in the world, but not of it. We can interact with the world as long as we don't adopt the values and the culture of the world. And we're to be one. It's not an ecumenical oneness of denominations. It's we must be one with the apostles. Jesus told us how we can engage the world without compromise. Paul, likewise, and I'll just be brief. He talked about being all things to all people. In other words, a missionary to his culture. If I went to China, I wouldn't expect the Chinese people to speak my language. I wouldn't expect to preach to them in English. I wouldn't expect that after church they would eat the food that I want. I wouldn't expect that their dress would be like mine. I would expect to adapt to them. Not the doctrine, but everything else. We have to be missionaries in our own culture in North America, recognizing we now have many cultures, many beliefs. We can't just come from a traditional Bible Belt culture. We have to come reaching our world. Missionaries to our world. When the songs we sing, it's not just about what makes us feel good, but it's also about how do we reach those people that don't even know those songs. How do we communicate? I'll leave it at that. But I hope you get the message. Coming to a close, will we compromise? We've answered that question many times, no. We must continue to answer that question, no. But we cannot afford a spirit of suspicion or a mode of attacking our brethren. Will we survive? Brother Chambers asked. Yes. We can look back on 100 years of Oneness Pentecostal history, 70 years of UPC history. We'll survive. Will we fulfill our potential? That's what I'm asking. And when the Lord spoke to me back in February, this is the last major point I want to make. I was worried because some people were saying I'm compromising. Some people were saying I'm making foolish decisions and this and that. And that kind of shocked me because my whole ministry has been writing In Search of Holiness, writing the New Birth, writing the Oneness of God. I mean, I know what it's like to be the only United Pentecostal young person in the whole country of 40 million people. You know, there's nobody to have fellowship with. There's nobody to date. Growing up as a teenager, I had to stand alone and my sister with me. There was no one in the whole country that I could relate to. If you think I'm going to compromise, I grew up in a place where I had to stand alone as the only English-speaking, understanding our culture, apostolic, oneness, Pentecostal young person, my sister and I, in the whole country. When I went to Rice University, one of the top 15 schools in the nation, I was the only United Pentecostal student in the whole college, the whole university, the whole campus. And they were teaching transgender and homosexual stuff back then. That was in my textbooks back then. That's nothing new. All this stuff that's happening in my culture today is shocking everybody. I saw that coming 40 years ago because they were trying to brainwash teenagers then. When I went to the University of Texas Law School, I was the only United Pentecostal young person in the whole law school, one of the top 10 law schools in the country. There had to be some UPC lawyer somewhere, but I did not personally know any United Pentecostal person that was going to law school to become a lawyer. So I had to stand up for what I believed. And politically speaking, I remember the day that Ronald Reagan was shot, attempted assassination. I walk into the break room at my law school, and everybody was cheering, saying, hope he dies, hope he dies. This stuff is nothing new. So if you think I'm going to compromise, if I was going to compromise, I would just go be a lawyer. And I can make a lot of money by compromising. Now, I'm not anti-lawyer. I still have my license with the State Bar of Texas, and you know, all those lawyer jokes, it's really not fair. It's only the 99% that give them a bad name. So, so I'm not even thinking compromise. So it shocked me that my fellow ministers would be talking about poor Brother Bernard, he's compromising. And so I was feeling sorry for myself, Brother Batcher, in the midst of that Holy Ghost revival. It was a little pity party. And then the Lord turned it on me. I felt like the Lord told me this. Don't ask, are you going to compromise? You and I both know we've had that conversation many years ago. What I want you to ask yourself, what are you willing to risk? They might ask it, they might think you're willing to compromise. I want to know, how far are you willing to risk? And it just so happened, I have not taken unusual risks, but I've traveled in communist countries under communism and done secret meetings. I've been stopped at the border and interrogated for 30 minutes by myself. I've smuggled in the New Birth and the Oneness of God books and been searched for 30 minutes and holding my breath, wondering what was going to happen when they found it. You know, I've been in situations this year where I had to hide in the restroom for 50 minutes while there was a security incident at the overseas country that I was dealing with. I've flown in since being superintendent. We had a major Muslim country with a great work, had some problems. They wanted me to help them. And then international incident and all kinds of violence. And so we discussed, is it even safe to go in? And so what we finally decided to do, they wouldn't announce my going in. I would just go in for 24 hours, fly in without telling anybody, go, meet their board, preach, fly back out the next day. And along with our missionaries and global missions personnel, we were able to make a major impact that changed the situation in that country. But there's a little risk involved. And so I was trying to decide whether to go on a trip in March, because now I'm general superintendent. Anybody can Google me and find out who I am, and then my cover's blown. And so I was thinking maybe it's not worth it. And my wife and I were talking about it. And here's the thing, a humbling thing. The leader sent me a message. I finally sent them a message. Is it safe? Because we had to cancel a trip there several years ago. They said it wasn't safe. And so I asked, is it safe? And their answer was, there's a very humbling thing. You're a man of God. God will tell you what to do. And whatever decision you make is going to be the right one. Wow. And so in that prayer meeting, God said, what are you willing to risk? So I said, okay, God, it really doesn't matter what happens on this trip. I'm going on this trip. I am going on this trip. And we did have that security incident, but I made it back. I'm here. I won't go into all the others because I've gone further than I intended to go. It's fair to ask if I'm going to compromise. I'll keep telling you, no, I'm not. It's fair to ask if we're going to make some wrong decisions and to correct them or to challenge them. That's okay. But at the end of the day, let's ask ourselves, let's not get in this attack mode. Let's not get in suspicion mode. Let's not get in survival mode. Let's not get in fortress mentality mode. But I would like to challenge you, every one of you. What are you willing to risk? What are you willing to sacrifice? If we're going to have worldwide revival, I can't take all the risk out of the equation. I can't take all the sacrifice out of the equation. Somebody has got to take a chance. Somebody's got to sacrifice. Somebody's got to risk. Let's stand together. So my question is, what will we sacrifice? I'm not asking you, will you compromise? I think you have answered that question over and over again. And we still need to answer that. But I want you to go further than that. What are you willing to risk for revival? What are you willing to sacrifice for revival? Can the United Pentecostal Church survive the onslaught of history? Yes. We proved it.
Yalla bir ardına.